shame that this is what people are going through. This next interview I'm super excited about. It's from Joshua Lennox. He is a licensed therapist and he provides some amazing insight um, to all of us on this topic. And here with Joshua Lennox. And what was your initial response to Philip's suicide?
This hurts my heart, not just from a professional stance as a professional licensed therapist, but also as a human being.
Right, right.
I too understand being that young, I believe he was 10 years old, of having to deal with bullying.
Oh, wow. So you were bullied. Was there any similarities that you see between you and your story and Philip's story?
Reading the articles and hearing about things of his grandmother weighing in, on her concern, and also, the parents feeling that they've done all that they can do. And there's so many times, as even for me myself, when I was younger, my mother validated me at home.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in the church. I knew that Jesus loved me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I did have very good friends at that time. However, when I was among my peers, that went to another level because now this
Mm.
is who I'm hoping to be accepted by, but I'm being called names. I'm being having things thrown at me.
Oh my
Being
goodness.
embarrassed in front of classmates. Being embarrassed in front of the lunch room. Being in the auditorium and being made a mockery of. And for this young man, for him being overweight, there were certain people that I used to watch get teased because of their size, and
Mm-hmm.
no one ever getting to know them as a true person. I had a best friend who was overweight, and he was always called chubby and fat boy, doughboy, stop eating so much, all these negative things. And I would watch him cry at home.
Oh my goodness.
And I would try to encourage him and, help him through things, but it was so difficult. And also for myself, I would get bullied and called names constantly. And when you're in that type of environment, um, you are constantly dealing with rejection, which is trauma.
Oh man. Well, help us out. As a licensed therapist, can those positive phrases and affirmation from our friends and family negate some of the bad stuff that we're getting in school or in other places outside of that?
I'm sure his family loved him, his siblings. However, seeing how your peers treat you can make you believe the perception that they have upon you, and you believe that, meaning that your self esteem may be to the ground because you hear it all the
That
time.
is so, so
I used to hear
true.
all the time I was ugly. And I believed it, and I was far from ugly, but I believed them because that's all I was hearing from them. So it's so hard to hear of such things like this, and it needs to be more awareness about it because I mean,
Exactly.
as a therapist, there are so many people who are dealing with suicidal ideation, and they have no one they feel they can turn to. I know
Mm-hmm.
for myself, I being bullied so much, when I would come home, I would cry myself to sleep
Dang.
several years. My mother was very in tune with me, so a lot of times she'd ask me what happened at school, what was wrong. Sometimes I'd tell her, most times I did not, because I felt I didn't want to bring on um, more pain for myself by my mother going up to the school and wanting to get justice, or going to the bus stops with me and, things like that. I didn't want to deal with that. So I kept it. I suffered in silence, as I think often, even as this young man did,
Right.
he suffered in silence. It's
Right.
not that he probably felt like he couldn't talk or didn't have love or care. He just probably felt like there was no one he really could talk to about it. And often parents and loved ones, they find it hard because they're like, well, we've done all that we could. We did the best we could. And that can be very true. However, no one's in the mindset or in the heart of these young people who are wanting to take their lives because they feel like it'd be better if they were no longer here. And
Yeah,
then it's
it's so
almost as
sad.
someone with a sickness, a chronic sickness. They don't want to continue to deal with this pain, so they feel like death would be so much better because they would be free from all of this agony, free from these medications, free from doctor visits. It's no different with someone who's wanting to commit suicide. It's just better maybe
Right.
for me not to be here. Maybe I won't have to keep hearing these names. I won't have to keep fighting. And as I saw in the article, he's been suspended several times from fighting, and it comes
Mm-hmm.
from, people could look at that as
The
anger,
anger,
but
right.
anger is a secondary emotion. There's always something undergirding. that emotion, meaning that it's a primary emotion, which for him, it could have been rejection, could have been abandonment, could have been frustration, isolation. It's something that was under that that would make him get to that point of having to defend himself in whatever way he could. I remember I would defend myself, um, whether I would speak up for myself or I throw something back at someone, and it seems like that's when I would get respect from people. And it's like,
That's
why do you have
crazy.
to resort to violence or resort to giving the person back what they're giving you, toxicity, in order for them to give you respect and not respect and care about you as a human, as who you are? And this story really breaks my heart. And I really pray that there will be a lot more people to speak up and speak out. And again, as a person who was bullied quite often, I remember even getting to a certain point of asking some of my close friends, if I died, would you cry?
Oh,
Would you be
wow.
sad? Would you miss me?
Dang, that's a
And I
lot.
would have some friends that would just cry. They'd be like, why would you ask me something like that? But I felt like my presence was not valuable because all I was getting was name calling, teasing, prank calls, things thrown at me, people
Oh,
trying to
wow.
hit me or trying to fight me all the time. So and again, it gives somebody anxiety. And
Right,
so
right.
school is supposed to be a place you're supposed to go to learn
A
and
safe
get your
place, yeah.
education and learn socialization with your
Mhm.
peers. And sometimes it can be a very dark place for some people, even if they are validated and loved so much outside of that.
So, where can we go from here? How do we make sure that these type of suicides are not in vain? How do we move forward? How do we learn?
I hope that it brings more awareness and to know that more people speak this language than we know. It's just that no one is maybe safe or comfortable to speak up until things like this happen. And I pray that we stop coming together only when tragedy strikes and start paying more attention to what's going on in with our children, even with our adults. Bullying doesn't stop just with children. It goes on even worse later on.
So true. One of my other guests, she talked about, well, she mentioned how adults can be bullied. Any closing remarks, anything you want to say before you go?
To this young man and his family, my prayers are with his family in their loss. I can only imagine how they feel. But I pray that even that this young man's life be a beacon of light to bring awareness to teachers, family, um, parents, friends, um, anyone, any human being to know that let's start looking out for one another and let's start standing up for one another. Let's start paying attention to the signs, even if we are not sure what it may be. So, um, I thank you for this time and this opportunity. And I hope that what I was able to contribute will enhance someone's thought process on bullying and suicidal um, ideation and the suicide period and mental health.
Thank you so much, Joshua Lennox, Joshua, Lennox, Lenox, on Facebook, on Instagram at Joshua Lennox #1. So just Joshua Lennox and then the #1. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for being on a region in my mind. So grateful to Joshua for that information. Shout out to yours truly on the keyboard with Lift Every Voice and Sing. Just a brief pause, a little commercial break in the middle of the podcast here. Thank you so much for your support. This is the second month that I've been doing this one person podcast, and I'm really enjoying it. And thank you so much. Each week we get more and more listeners. So please, please, please